welcome, loves, to another episode of About Her. Today, I'm super excited to welcome in Manisha. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Super excited to be here.
Yes, me too. We've discussed a bit off record about what is the topic to share. And yeah, before we dive into that, Manisha, I would love to ask you to share a bit about yourself so that we can kind of feel into what is coming up right now.
Sure. So, it's been an interesting ride for sure. For me, I was in the corporate field for the longest time. I started working the day after I finished high school. I was in my work and it was interesting. So, I started really young, obviously, and it was this very, masculine way of if you need this, you got to go out, make the money. So, that was the mindset I sort of had at the age of 17. And then I did the corporate life till about, I want to say 28, 29. Yeah. And then, it was just interesting that I had my second one. And then I decided that, you know what, I can't do this anymore physically, mentally, emotionally. And I live in Dubai. I was born and raised here. So we never really did have the whole work from home culture, remote working, all of those things, even flexible hours. So when I was in that situation, I actually went up to my company and I said, you know what, if you guys give me flexible hours and things, I think I could continue, but otherwise this is really becoming hard. And that wasn't an option. So the only option I had was to quit, which is fine because otherwise I wouldn't have had the time to come in and explore all of these other spiritual practices that somehow I got into. So yeah, looking back, I mean, it's been 13 years now and I was just curious about feng shui. While I was still in corporate, I was like, I want to redecorate my home. I want to see what can I do to maybe enhance colors and things. And then Google started showing me these wonderful ads. And then I moved into, okay, let me go study this. And that just blew my mind. Like I was introduced in this world of crystals and feng shui and metaphysical studies. And that was just the beginning. So that was, 2011, I want to say. And that's it. Never looked back. And since then, I've been studying all these amazing modalities like chakras and angels, human design, tarot cards, meditations, access bars, connecting with the other realms, channeling, speaking light language myself, and all of those wonderful amazing things. And so here we are, 2025, and I think I'm not done yet.
No. Oh,
Yeah.
I love what you shared. It's such a journey if we decide most times out of necessity to
Hmm.
dive deeper into getting to know ourselves and at the same time getting to know the universe and all this
Yeah.
magical energy that is present there that we if in a 9 to 5 normally because of the hustle and the hamster wheel we don't even get to it because
Yeah.
there's just no time or openness. But if we do, then all these things pop up, and you can certainly learn about the atmosphere of the home depending on how you decorate it, and the crystal work, and all this power that is at our fingertips, but we haven't even noticed. I think that's super important that there's this other world almost that
Yeah.
we have no idea of.
Literally, I think even when I was working, I remember in my corporate job, I remember having this conversation with my CTO, and you can imagine, the logical mind, the CTO of the company. And we were talking just about the desk, and I was like, "Oh, the desk can feel that. Don't be so mean to the desk." And he's like, "What? What do you mean?" And I used to say things like that. I mean, even when I was little, it's like, "Oh, the plants. We can talk to the plants," or those kind of things. And nobody ever got that until of course when I started studying energy, and I'm like, everything is energy is all around us. And now obviously we're talking about those kind of things at quantum physics, and Joe Dispenza, obviously his amazing work with all of those things, that everything is literally energy, and we can, just because we can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And then the more we dig into that, you realize that okay, we can feel it, but if you can just bring in that awareness or that sense of presence in every moment, then you can feel the energy of everything around you all the time, even the people around us, right? Like relationships, how much do we pick up from our partners, from our children, how our children are constantly reflecting, mirroring us as well. And all of that is just energy bouncing around. So we just need to be present and aware, and then you can see it. It's like, if you believe in magic, it's everywhere. If you don't, it doesn't exist. So it almost feels like that to me.
Yeah, true. For me too. I always was drawn to witchcraft and wizardry and like being raised with Harry Potter books, I was like, oh my God, couldn't why can't this be true? And then I kind of found out like, oh, actually it is. In its own way it is. So there is so much magic around here. And I love what you share about like the desk and the plants feeling it, because me, I had that too. And my husband is till that day, he's looking at me like, you feel the energy of all the stuff around you, and says, yes, that's why I love minimalism, because it's just too much for me. But
To
I
us.
can't imagine like when you have been in that work environment where nobody kind of had that awareness, that must have been like such an opening to learn feng shui and all these other beautiful tools, to see like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one, feeling that there are other like-minded people I can share with, I can talk about it, I can exchange like insights and information. Like what a coming home feeling that must have been to dive deep into that world.
Yeah, honestly, it was really interesting because then I realized obviously in the class there were so many people who were so experienced, and then there were those who were completely new like me. And I was just so hungry to learn. I was so hungry to know what else is out there. And that's what kind of took me onto this path of learning for so many years, until of course I reached a point where we're like, you just can't take in anything anymore, you just need to stop and now recalibrate. But yeah, it's like the whole, I think the whole metaphysical world is so vast, there is so much to know, and it is kind of like a slippery slope, I would say. It's like you just feel like you just want to know more and more. And then I think again that awareness is very important, that why am I learning? Am I learning to learn, or am I learning just to give myself that dopamine hit, that okay, I've just done yet another certification, I've got yet another feather in my cap? Why am I doing it? So I feel like, including myself, a lot of us get stuck in that sort of, or we fall into that trap of, I don't know enough, I don't know enough, until you reach a point where you're like, you know what, I bloody well know enough. Now I need to just stop and apply. But to be able to apply, you need to recalibrate everything. And I feel like for me, that point was 2020. And I know, I mean, for a lot of people it was like a really terrible year. And but for me it was just like, because we couldn't go out, and obviously Dubai was the easiest, I guess. We didn't have a lot of restrictions and things, but still you were home, and we had to be creative in the way, how can you do healing sessions? I couldn't do in-person sound baths anymore, I couldn't do in-person tarot readings anymore, so how am I couldn't do in-person feng shui consultations anymore. And then I had some really nice clients who were like, okay, just do it online. And I was like, I don't think I can do it online. And but they were so confident that this can work online, they just had faith in me more than I did myself. And that's when I was like, okay, how can we do it? So I moved a lot of my work online, but then I also started seeing, okay, how can I bring all of this together in an easy conversation? And that's what helped me to birth sort of like my way of coaching my clients, like helping them to really unlock what's in them. Because I feel it's like all of us are very intuitive, all of us know so much already, like we come with this knowing, the soul is born with it. But this need to have the knowledge to learn new things, because we feel maybe we're not enough, maybe it comes from, I don't know, this feeling of, I don't know, traumas. I guess traumas is used very loosely these days, so I use it with a little bit caution. But yeah, it's like, you could have confidence issues, or you could just have this feeling that I don't know enough for whatever reasons. And then we start accumulating all of these things, these degrees, certifications, to try and get there. But my main goal became that, how can I help everybody see that you have everything inside of you? Because I reached that point where I was like, oh, damn, everything is inside of me. And that realization came so much through my own deep meditation practices. So I studied how to be a meditation teacher as well. That was another certificate, but that really helped my meditations escalate so much. But then I realized this is what I could even teach people, that you can learn how to identify your emotions by knowing more about the chakras. Or if something is not going right in your body physically, then it is coming from an emotion that is not being processed. So that's what I did in 2020. I sort of made my own way of coaching people to help them, like, okay, all of the answers are inside you. And yes, of course, if you really need to learn, let's say you need a degree in coding, you have to go learn that. That's not just going to fall, somehow. Maybe it does for some people, I don't know. But I mean, there is a lot of things which is already there inside of you. So that was a very interesting phase, I guess, where I started realizing that a lot of us need to stop doing things for the heck of doing it. But
Mhm.
I think those realizations come from, sitting with yourself deep in, maybe even contemplation. Doesn't always have to be meditation, but even just contemplation. just sit with yourself and listen to what your body's saying, listen to what thoughts are coming up, watching all of those things and becoming the observer rather than just going through the motions and living each day as it comes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And
Yeah.
oh, so many questions that are popping up. So, what I think is super interesting is like this. We've talked about that before a bit. Is this like learning for the sake of learning, and then I kind of the point where we reflect, like, why am I doing this? Because I think it's kind of a trap that is not seen as easily as like other. Let's even call it addiction at some point
Yeah. Yeah.
to learning, and it's much more socially accepted than like an addiction to, I don't know,
Right.
drugs of any
Yeah.
other kind.
Yeah.
But there's I had that too. I can raise my hand on that too. Like this, it's so much information out there, and it's like if you're interested in this and then that, and like especially in the spiritual field, it kind of feels like playing detective and seeing what other tools are there, and it's natural that we are led down the path of from crystals to tarot to like, I don't know, deeper meditation to like channeling to light language. It all makes sense. But on the other hand, I see so many stuck in this like learning for
Yeah.
brain food
Yeah.
and not learning to embody. And I feel that is like a gap that
Mhm.
wants to be closed if you really don't want to learn just for the dopamine hit, but for like really embodying what we've learned. Because you could have 10 titles and 20 certifications, but you still feeling stuck in your life or feeling hopeless or not connected because we haven't implemented the work. So I think it's a very, very necessary point to say, like, maybe I stop learning something new here and really try to implement all that I have now and see that ultimately everything I have is coming from the inside. And maybe these tools, like you said, are unlocking things, are helping us to remember, like with your example of you learning how to do meditations. Yeah, definitely. Like that is like helping you remember, but it's not like the information coming from the outside and you like kind of getting them, but it's more like a remembering. And we can do that too. But often I feel like in the world we live in, and I'm curious to see if you would say yes to that too, is there is so much like entertainment
Mhm.
that being quiet, meditating, and seeing what comes up without a guided meditation, without a new learning, without a new system to implement, just like seeing what comes up and accessing the higher powers that we all have access to, sounds maybe even boring, or there is resistance around compared to, oh, let me open another course and learn about gene
Yeah.
keys, for example, or whatever, which is beautiful, you know? So, but it's
Right.
like
Yeah.
there is a dance on these.
Right. 100%. Yeah. And it's interesting you said gene keys because that's literally the gene keys, right? I love the gene keys because it's so interesting. Like it's going deeper into your human design if you're into gene keys. But the essence of gene keys is to sit in quiet contemplation, right? So they talk about it in the book, or Richard talks about it in the book, that if you just sit with yourself, you read a paragraph and you sit with yourself and then you allow it to do its work, and that's when the shift happens in your genes, literally. But we're so used to the whole hustle culture, like including myself. Like imagine at the age of 17, I was told that I really wanted to study. I wanted to do a master's in marketing and all of those things. But I was told that, okay, it's going to be super expensive to do that in Dubai. But if you want to do it, you have to go work and you have to make the money to do it yourself. And obviously, I took it on board, and there's no blame or anything to it because that really made me the fighter, I'm going to go get it. And I've manifested everything that I wanted in my life at that really young age. So it's so drilled in, that masculine way of fight, fight, fight. I'm going to manifest it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to make it happen. That now you reach a point, like even for me, and I know a lot of my clients, because as I'm growing up, I'm still young, but as I'm growing up, and my clients as well in the millennial demographic, when we speak to them, it's like everyone's tired of the hustle culture. Do you know what I mean? And when you look at the newer generation, they're actually so inspiring. And sometimes it really ticks me off when I look at this content my children, they're showing me on TikTok, and I'm like, that video has 1 million views, and here I am busting my ass talking about meditations and like crystals, and I have my e-commerce store, and I have this. It's like, wow, these children have it sorted. They know what it is to receive. They know how to just be laid back and chill and have fun and just create some fun content, and they've got it. But that's literally, like, I mean, it takes such a big I think shift in the way we are as people. It's like, what were you, what did you grow up with? What messages did we get as a child? And again, there is, it might sound blamey, but for me, I love to know where it's coming from, so I know how I can understand it better. Not to fix it because it's not broken, not to, find a way to fault somebody for it, but oh, okay, this is the source. And okay, now I know how to adjust it so that I can reframe my reality right now. So to move from a space of I have to go, 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 even for me, and I'm still practicing, like, how can I be more soft? How can I just be a little slower? How can I be a little bit calmer? Just sitting and, like you said, like doing a meditation without any sound and any music. How does that feel? And it's absolutely beautiful, but at the same time, I cannot discount the beauty of crystals and how much they help me to reach to this point where I can now sit for an hour and meditate without anything. But at the beginning, I used my labradorites to open my third eye. I used my moldavite to open my heart chakra, and I had such beautiful experiences. I highly recommend to anyone who's listening that you have to try these two stones for sure if you're on the spiritual path. But yeah, eventually you want to get to that space where you realize that it's all in here. Like the book The Alchemist. Have you read it, from Paulo Coelho?
It's on my long list of books. I haven't read it.
You have, oh my god, it's, I love it. You have to read it. It is, I think, my favorite book, and every time you read it, it hits different. It's
Cool.
it's wonderful. Yeah.
It's interesting because it's in my library for such a long time, together with so many other books, and it's what we
Right.
discussed before, like
Yeah.
trying to hop from one thing to another. But it's interesting because it's calling me. So thank you for mentioning it and confirming that it's now time to dive deep in. Yeah, yeah, and I love what you said because I think these so often we are like easy to judge on our path and reflect and say like, oh, I could have like come to this point without all the knowledge that I've accumulated, with all the studying. But on the other hand, the universe is not making mistakes. So us learning so much, as doing all these courses to kind of maybe validate our knowledge or remember our knowledge, it has its point. So I think it was necessary to a point. Yeah, we could have done it without it, but it was necessary. Maybe it was the easier way or the faster way or the whatever. We collected some sparks of light along the way with all the things we did. So it's not about judging how we came to where we are, but it's, I think, about like acknowledging that ultimately it all comes down to us and to our connection with ourselves and the way we can access it when we really are confident that we can access it. It's like, it's a true world opening up. So there's nothing wrong in using stones or tarot cards or whatever. But it's also possible without, because we ultimately are the greatest tools we could ever learn about. So there
Exactly.
is, I think it's about the combination and about the confidence. And what you spoke to, what I also want to double down on is like this, maybe call it even unworthiness or this like not enoughness that so many of us have. Actually, like almost every woman I know
Yeah.
um, has some kind of, which is actually crazy if you think about like
Mhm.
so many people, almost 100%, um, that I know at least have this like, oh, I need to blah 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 so that I
Mhm.
can feel
Yeah.
better, more worthy,
Yeah.
maybe even allowing in success or love or whatever it is. But there is this like, oh, I'm not complete without anything. I need to like have this additional whatever to feel better. And it's an interesting thing because if you look from a more cosmic standpoint, then I think it's like actually a bit hilarious that we're trying to add stuff when like if I look down from a galactic standpoint, I think like, what do you have? You already have enough. You already are complete. So what's the hustle about? And it's kind of the programming I feel that we have to need to get a certification, especially in the coaching space, or if you want to work as an entrepreneur for yourself. I would love to know like how you felt with when you've gone into coaching with all the certifications and all the courses you have. Like, do you think they're actually like necessary for you to show up more confident, or would you say like, okay, well, there is no coaching for light language channeling, you're rather have it or not? Because like I've decided to not get a coaching certification because I always say like there is no certification from spirit. But on the other hand, there's my old programming coming in and said, but you
Yeah.
need to like have a title for people to feel that
Yeah.
you're trustworthy. And then it's like, no, I don't. When it's this constant like programming versus abundance mentality that is kind of coming in.
Mhm. For sure. I mean, we just spoke about this a bit briefly before as well, that in my human design, I'm a 2-4 profile. So I'm a Manigen, 2-4, sacral authority. And so as a two, a line two, the two is known as the natural, the hermit, but also the natural. So the natural just knows. And the natural knows things, but it doesn't know how it knows what it knows. So I didn't realize this, obviously, until, I mean, till I did my human design, that, okay, this is something that I have, this is something that is in me. But obviously, I only discovered human design in 2020. But before that, I mean, my whole journey with this, the spiritual journey, I say quote unquote, because it's like we're always spiritual. We are born spiritual. We kind of forget and then we come back home to, okay, now I'm on my spiritual journey. So when that started in 2011, I started meditating. I found these teachers and I went in for things like, angel card workshops, connecting with angels and all of those things. And obviously I went into it head on, but then I used to just sit and I used to just play with it. I used to listen to different meditations every now and then. And then I once went to see this medium who was then telling me he was channeling Archangel Michael. And so Archangel Michael came through and he was saying that you're going to stop coming to this man to visit me because you are going to do this yourself. And I was just like, what do you mean I'm going to do this? What do you mean? And it didn't make sense to me. So after the session ended, I asked this medium, who was very sweet, and I asked him, like, what do you mean? How does it work? How does channeling work? And he's like, well, you just have to sit, you do this, you try and connect with your higher self, and then they come through and they speak to you, and you might see them, or you might, speak in a different voice. It happens in different ways for different people. And when he said those things, I was like, but I'm already doing that. And he's like, okay, and then this. And I was like, yeah, but I'm doing that. So he's like, oh, so you're already channeling. And I was like, is that what channeling is? So I didn't realize that I am already channeling. And then after a certain time, I realized that in my meditations, my hands would start moving in different gestures, like mudras, as we call them. And I didn't know what was happening, but it was just energy releasing and doing what it had to do. And sometime after that, light language started coming through, and I would just speak in these languages which made no sense, until I had to go and Google it, like even speaking like snake language, or like snake tongues, as they say it. And a lot of, I mean, I had to go and research it. Am I making this up? Am I just making up some Harry Potter shit in my head? Because I think it's like, again, in the spiritual world, like there's so much out there that you doubt yourself, like, is this really true? Until you meet your group of people and there's so many others doing it, and you're like, okay, it just can't be me. There are more out there. So a lot of these gifts I just downloaded, I guess, myself. Like I there was no official training for all of these things. Or I would just sit in my meditation. Once I was just, like, we all have our husbands and our family as guinea pigs to test on, and I was trying to do some healing session on my husband with his chakras, and I heard the word crystalline light. Use crystalline light. And I said, what is crystalline light? So I started doing that, and then I was describing it to someone much later, and she's like, oh, you're doing Reiki. And I said, is that Reiki? Because I don't know what Reiki is. I wasn't certified in Reiki. So yeah, I mean, the answers are there within all of us, right? The question is that, are we willing to stop and listen? Are we willing to just quieten the noise around us so that we can actually tune in to those messages? And if you think about it, like all these people who have downloaded all these beautiful modalities like human design or access consciousness, all of them have channeled this information anyways. It's not like someone came and taught them, they just sat in contemplation and it came through. So, but everybody can do that. We're all gifted. Maybe it's easier for a two line because that's what my configuration is, but that doesn't mean that if you're not, you can't have it. It's not like I'm super special. But I think a lot of us don't realize the potential that we have. But I think it's like, if you can, you know what I mean? Like if you can find someone who can help you to do that, it could be someone like me or yourself or anyone. But if you can find someone who can show you that beauty that is already inside of you and open that for you, I think that would be such a big shift for all of us on the planet.
Agreed, 100% agreed. And I loved the heart when you described your journey of like channeling and light language, because that's essentially what happened to me, where my
Amazing.
hands were moving for years. And I was like, kind of, okay, well, I did Indian dancing for most of my teenage years. And I kind of thought like, okay, my body is just remembering stuff. And then I stumbled upon someone who is doing light language, and I thought, like, oh, that's what I'm doing. It was so funny because what you just talked about, I think is like a common topic that so many of us share, that we already are doing the things, but because we don't have a like logical definition, because our brain can't put it into a box called
Mhm.
Reiki, called light language, called channeling, called whatever, we kind of don't see the value in it. It's almost hilarious, I think, to see like, hey, you're channeling for so long, me too. And then I think like, oh, I already can do that. Amazing, and kind of like confidence streams in, and you think,
Yeah.
well, you actually are much more capable than you think, but you need to often have that reflect back from someone else. So it's really a beautiful design, like I think the way our universe mirrors everything back to us constantly, if we are ready to take it, so that we can see what is in store of us too. Because like, imagine nobody had like taught you that there are other people you haven't found on the internet, there are other people doing light language, or that this crystalline light channeling is called Reiki here. Maybe you would not have like received this like lean back confidence of, okay, that's what I'm doing. I think it's really interesting that we often are not trusting ourselves for the knowledge we have, but we're going to other people like a medium or someone who activates your light language. So many people ask me how to activate it, and I say, okay, I don't know. It's not on me to activate it. I can have the intention to do it, but if you're not ready, then I can have all the intention that you want. It's like coming from both sides. So there's no logical structure to it, but there is like kind of an accumulation of similar energy that we then call a certain system. And I feel if people would just like trust themselves more, really access these gifts, and like you said, sit in contemplation, sit in meditation, do more prayer, and actually start believing what comes. It's not just a thought, it's like a divine message. Stop doubting our abilities to interpret these things or to access our intuition, because nothing is just a thought. It's everything has its meaning, depending on the meaning and how much value you give it, how you like kind of box it into where it needs to go. But it's everything has its message. So why not believing ourselves? Do we believe Ra Uru who channeled human design so much more than our own insights in our own meditation? Not that he's done something really beautiful. I don't want to but
Of
we
course.
can
Yeah.
do that too.
Yeah.
So why doubt the one thing and then believe and study and get certified in another? It's just not making so much sense.
Yeah, I love that so much. Yeah, that's actually a good point, right? Like if I can believe Ra, why can't I believe myself? And yeah, it's yeah, for sure. But I think it's also about yeah, just working on our own confidence. I think it's like I don't know where I mean there's obviously so many different ways in which we can have these, low confidence or low self-esteem issues where they come from, but again, I feel it's like it's just about sitting with ourselves and, being aware that this is something that could be causing it rather than just because if you're not in awareness of, and I feel like, I think somebody asked me the other day that out of all the things that you've been studying, if there was one thing that you asked me to do every day, what would that be? And my answer was meditate. You know, um, all the tools have their space, but if you can sit with yourself every single day and just allow yourself to listen to yourself, there's so much magic we can create. And I think yeah, it's as simple as that. We don't have to overcomplicate it, but we do get lost in all of the noise and all of the there's also a lot of, I would say marketing or messaging out in the spiritual community that you need this or you don't know enough or you need yet another training to help you get there, and that feels a little maybe sad to a certain extent, but then again, that is to find fault and blame. So I guess each one of us has to go through that journey, and the soul chose that journey. So if my soul had to learn the lesson of how to believe in myself a little bit more, I guess all of these are just they're actually helping me. All of this marketing message that says, oh Manisha, you need yet another certificate, is actually helping me to realize that, oh, I still have some inner work to do on my own self-confidence and my self-esteem, etc., so on. So yeah, I guess it all happens for a good reason.
Yes, agreed. And it's interesting that bringing these two up because it's something that I'm like meditating on for quite some while now. This like two kind of perspectives that are really present in my head. Which one of them is like I have a like deep unworthiness issue that I'm working on for years, like so many of us. And sometimes it comes up in a way that, do I really know enough? Am I really worthy of receiving this money, love, attention, whatever? And then on the other hand, it's so easy for me to see the worthiness in others that I sometimes think like, they can do it on their own. They don't actually need a coach. They don't actually need me, because we all have this potential. And then these two like are discussing in my head. I'm thinking, okay, well, that's interesting, you know? And I feel like so many of us have that, especially in the spiritual realm, this like deep belief that everyone has access to these tools. Like you said, I totally agree. Meditation is the most important thing to do because it's a connection to self. Everything else is yet another external entertainment. And there's nothing wrong with it, but it's not coming from within. It's like coming from without and you accept it in, which is beautiful, but you can also like draw it from within to without. It's how we create. So that's the most important thing. And I think there are like the way you come to this confidence to say like, okay, what I believe in the inside is what I want to manifest out, which is like kind of what human design is about, like how the energy flows and comes out of the throat. um, we all have different ways for that, and sometimes we need another person to see the value in us or see the talent in us before we see it on our own, but ultimately it's already there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's all there within us. And yeah, there was something I had to say. It just completely slipped my head. But yeah,
It
no,
will come
yeah.
back.
Oh yeah, okay, it's yeah, yeah. So what I was thinking, yeah, when you were saying that, it's like all of these tools, yeah, they have their space, and I also feel that it's a great way to discover yourself. So, but at the end, I mean, it's great to know. Let's say, for example, like I'm a Scorpio Sun, Virgo Moon, and a Capricorn Rising. So that really helped me understand that okay, this is why I love talking about work all the time. I love working. That's my Capricorn energy. My Virgo Moon, I love to have things organized. It has to be systems. Everything has to make sense. And the Scorpio energy is like, the bold, the out there, the loud, the one who will just say it as it is. That's my Scorpio Sun energy. So when you see things from that lens, or the 2-4 human design profile, it's like, okay, this is who I am. This is what my natural tendency is. This is what I will gravitate towards more. But I mean, it's very important to not be stuck with those sort of lens to look at life through. So, yeah, okay, this gives me visibility on who I am, but at the end, the inner work still needs to be done. So, I could be a bold Scorpio, snappy woman, but maybe there are days when I just don't want to talk to anybody. Maybe there are days where I just want to be very quiet and be an introvert and hide in a little cave somewhere. And that's just how I'm feeling today. So, it's nice to use these tools to get to know who we are. And and there's an abundance of things out there, right? The other day I got this such a cool prompt for Chat GPT, which said, tell me about my ancestral karma wounds. And I thought that was brilliant, and I obviously put the prompt into Chat GPT, and it told me everything, and I was like, bloody hell, this is so on point. So okay, but now I know this. Now can I am I going to choose to be a victim, that oh, because my ancestry was this, or because I have a witch wound, or because my grandparents blah blah blah? Am I going to be stuck in that story and that narrative? Or it's like, okay, this is what is, but what can I do to kind of understand it and know it better? And sometimes as soon as you know this, it already just shifts something in you, right? So if we call it as healing, it's just knowing something can sometimes just heal it. It's almost like putting on a light in a dark room. There is darkness right now. I wasn't aware that I have this wound or this trauma or this ancestral baggage or whatever, but as soon as I know and I switch the light on in this room, now everything is clear and the darkness has disappeared. So sometimes just knowing is enough, and not being stuck with it or being stuck with that diagnosis, I guess, is super important. As is with medical conditions as well, like the people who get stuck with their medical diagnosis are actually stuck with it a lot longer as compared to someone who might question it to say, okay, what is this trying to tell me?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you for bringing that out, because I feel that is something that happens so often. And actually, what you just said is why I didn't go into human design earlier, because it like kind of called me for years. And I was thinking like, oh, I don't want to put myself in yet another box. Sometimes spiritual tools, you can interpret them as, oh, I'm this sort of thing. Oh, I'm a Virgo moon too. So I know what you mean about the structure. I'm that, and that's why. And we kind of not only explain our own behavior and thought patterns with these boxes that we found for ourselves, but we kind of hide behind them. And it's like, oh, because I'm a Virgo moon, I can't be spontaneous or something like this, you know? There's often this kind of making excuses with the boxes that we've put ourselves in with all
Hmm.
these like spiritual modalities. Could be astrology, could be human design, could be gene keys, could be like numerology, whatever. But it's like this is a path to go, but it's not an empowered one. It makes us the victim, or it kind of restricts us and adds like an extra limiting belief or limiting beliefs, more of them, so that we don't do what we're actually called to do. But on the other hand, we can see it differently. And when I finally did human design and studied it, I thought like, oh, okay, this is not putting me in a box at all. This is rather explaining. So like you said so beautifully, making the light turn on and see like, okay, that's why, ba 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 ba. And since then, things are clicking more easily, not because I choose to stay like, oh, well, I cannot do this because I am a 1-3. I don't have the hermit I can download, you know? But it's more like, oh, okay, because I'm a 1-3, I'm maybe I can do this, or this is more easily. So it's depending on the perspective you come in with, that gives you the power to like really feel more like yourself or get to know yourself better. Or if you choose to come from a more like victimhood mentality, it can also like put you in a really big box that you then afterwards try to decondition yourself out of. So it really, there is a lot of awareness work in even studying spiritual tools.
Yeah, I think so. And for me, I always have my husband as my compass because I think in December I was sending him a lot of astrology posts on Instagram, and he's like, "Your feed is full of astrology stuff. What's going on?" Like, you know. So whenever I start moving a little bit towards like, okay, what can I blame this on? You know, I mean, it happens to the best of us. I've been doing this for a while, but obviously, still every now and then I'm like, oh, it must be the retrograde, it must be the full moon. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's easy to still pass the buck off onto something else than to feel your own feelings and emotions. But yeah, it's about, I think, using those tools and coming back to it. But like even human design, I agree with you so much because as a manifesting generator, I at the beginning was like, oh, this is why I'm all over the place, this is why I do 10 things at a time. But then it was again thanks to my husband, he kind of brought me back on track, and he's like, yeah, you can do 10 things, but you can be the master of all 10 if you want. So if you don't want to do something, just say you don't want to do it. It's not, don't blame it that I'm a manifesting generator, which is why I can't do these 10 things. You know what I mean? And so that was quite an interesting thing. So he's always sort of like my pillar to kind of bring me back to, okay, come back to your grounding, like come back to your inner knowing. He's a manifester, so very wise. Yeah, so can see beyond what I can see sometimes in different ways. But like even with your human design, I'm just looking at yours with an open solar plexus, with an open heart center. You're not the two natural like me, but you can feel other people's emotions so easily. You must be, if you're sitting in a room with somebody who has a lot going on and they're not feeling it, you can feel it maybe even before them. So
Yes.
do you feel that? Do you relate to that? Yeah.
Oh, so much. And you know, this is like, it's interesting that you mentioned this, because when I found human design and I've realized, okay, that is why I'm taking on all the emotions of others and then wondering why I feel off, why I feel grumpy. I've never had that. And I always knew I'm like really sensitive and empathic, but seeing this in the picture and seeing like this open solar plexus, I thought, like, oh, okay. And then I kind of learned to observe myself and see like, okay, I'm feeling grumpy now all of a sudden, and I haven't
Yes.
before. I'm emotionally quite stable. I don't have like the big
Yeah.
manifestor emotional waves. I don't have that.
Yeah.
So, okay, where it's coming from? Oh, it's not mine. So that helped me a lot to like really release and cleanse out the energy from other people. And before, it was often I felt like the need to protect myself very much so
Mhm.
that I'm not taking on all the stuff because like till this day, if my husband comes home and I feel that everything's kind of like not where it's not he's not aligned, he's feeling off, and I ask him like, "How are you doing?"
Yeah.
Everything's fine. I'm like, okay, so he doesn't even notice it yet, but I
Yes.
feel it so amplified. I think like, no,
Oh,
it's not
yeah.
fine. What is it? But he can't feel it. So it's
Yeah.
really interesting that we can pick on other people's
Yeah.
emotions even before they can, without saying that that's good or bad. It's just like a thing to do. But the moment I knew it, it was so much easier for me to let go and also to give that back to him. To say like, "Okay, yeah, it's not mine, fine, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
I can just be here, support you, but also like protect myself to not take that on." And I think for that is like awareness is sometimes is really enough. Not always, unfortunately, but sometimes it's just knowing.
Yeah, oh my God. You just like this is literally what I was thinking, that it again comes down to the awareness, right? Because I'm the same man, Jen with the sacral authority, and you have the sacral authority as well. So on your own, you're just very stable, right? It's
Yeah.
like it's almost flatline. Our emotions
Mhm.
are very flatline in that sense. But my husband emotional authority, my son's an emotional authority, and my daughter is splenic. But when they're all in the room and they all have defined emotional centers, heart centers, and stuff, and when I'm in a room sometimes with them, I can just walk in and I'm like, whoa, it
Mhm.
feels like a lot, and the helper in me, or the person who is helping people figure stuff out in their life, wants to immediately run and rescue and help. And you want to do that, but it's taken a lot of training again for me to realize as well that I just have to step back, and it's like, does this belong to me? No, this is not mine. This doesn't feel like mine. Like, I have no reason to be upset, angry, or pissed off right now. It's not my energy, and I just keep saying it to myself, this is not mine, this is not mine. And also, it was so important to shift from that mindset that, oh, I am taking on everything. And people, you get this a lot, like energy vampires, and yeah, I'm an empath, oh poor me. And then you move into this state of like, oh, I just have an open center, and that's why I'm taking it and amplifying everything 10x. So all I have to do is just like distance myself, and that's all it takes. But again, it comes from awareness. So I see the beauty of knowing these kind of tools, like knowing your human design. It's so important. I think every person should learn their human design. It's so important, because only when you know yourself, you can know how is it to feel when it's not you. If I've taken on somebody's energy, okay, this doesn't feel like mine. But if I don't know who I am, I'm just gonna walking around, just like a big garbage bag of all kinds of emotions and all kinds of issues. And I just don't even know. I don't even know if I'm feeling angry. I don't even know. Like you said, as your husband, he doesn't even feel it. And sometimes it's that way I see it with my clients, or even in the family. Like, you see that they're not even aware that there is something not okay. Um, but yeah,
I
comes.
love that you said it because that's what I want to touch on too. It's like to make really use of all the tools. Could be human design, could be something else. You need to know where and who you are first, because if you don't know, because you've always maybe run around with an open emotional center and you've never realized that all these emotions aren't actually yours, then you don't have like a clear baseline to say like, oh, something is off or something is not. So the more we are like disassociated from our feelings, from our body, from our physical experiences, and not just in the logical, the less we can kind of actually get when something is off. So there again, like circling back to meditation or mindfulness practices in general, to like really feel like, how do I feel? Like this was a big for me. How do I feel when my body is rested? As a generator, I'm constantly like working, hustling, and I love it. I really love it. But then again, I was like asking myself for years, like, is this rest? No, no, it's not. And then when I finally found like a calm nervous system, I was like, oh, okay, but
This
you
is
need
what
to
it
have this
feels like.
baseline. This is what it feels like. And the same thing with emotions. Like, how do I feel when I'm actually joyful? How does
Yeah.
it feel for me, joy? Okay,
Yeah.
it feels joyful. Yeah, but what is it like? How do I feel? Is there any tension or not? How do
Yeah.
I feel angry? Is this my anger or not? You can distinguish when you
Yeah.
know how your anger feels
Yeah.
compared to how the anger of your family feels or the frustration. So
Yeah.
this like coming back to ourselves again, 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 like a
Yeah.
golden thread is the most important thing to actually learn how to dance with others as well in our lives, because we then can distinguish, okay, well, that's the frustration of my son not being able to, like, I don't know, complete his homework at school, or that's the frustration of my family who just had a fight or whatever, but it's not mine. I cannot tell if I don't know what mine is. And for that, like, it needs to be quiet and sitting with ourselves and actually like wanting to welcome whatever comes.
Exactly. Yeah, I see so many people going around not knowing how to be alone. You know, so many couples are in relationships, they just don't know how to do things alone, how to sit alone, how to travel alone, you know, how to eat a meal alone, and how. And I mean, there's no judgment to it, but it's like when you watch that, it's like it is so important, because then when you see friction in those relations and then you understand, it's like you're just, it's almost like, you know, you're just feeding off on each other's worries and issues and things. But the point is that at the end of the day, we all come alone, we leave alone. It's all about you, it's your journey. So you have to spend that, you have to invest that time into knowing who you are. And yeah, it again comes, I think it takes a lot of strength, and it takes a lot of curiosity. Sometimes I feel like almost wanting to know who I am at a very deeper level. And yeah, I think, I hope that everybody gets to that stage one day.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
me too. Me too. I think the world would be such a different one if everybody does
Right.
connect to
Yeah.
themselves, because for me, I can imagine that world really vividly. That's a world without
Yeah.
war or without so
Yeah.
much tension, so much fighting, or so much like unhuman behavior, let's call it, and more in tune with nature. Because, like, if you're really connected to yourself, you feel like, oh, okay, Greg Braden actually, I think, really beautifully explained it with his way of explaining the holographic universe, that if we are in tune with ourselves, we would never harm anything outside of ourselves, because we realize that it's all part of us and we are all part of that. So there is no need for fight or war or resistance or kind of like the tension side of things, because we realize it's all us. So that
Yeah.
coming back is a
Yeah.
game changer if it happens globally, but it's also a game changer if it happens individually, because it's like the starting point that can ripple out. And
Exactly.
it doesn't have to be that hard. I think people are often scared to do that because they think like,
Yeah.
oh, I cannot meditate. I
Yeah.
cannot even count how many times I've heard that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
not true. Maybe you're a walking meditation person, or maybe you're a dancing meditation person, or maybe
Yeah.
you're a Zen meditation person. It
Yeah.
actually doesn't matter, but you can do it. And most
Yeah.
likely you're doing it already. But
Yeah.
there's so much like doubt around what we can or cannot do. And there's so much fear around, am I doing it right? How to connect? Like, there's nothing coming. I don't see anything. There's so many expectations, which doesn't mean that it's not there. It's maybe just meant that you haven't like found the matching tool at the moment. And it's again coming back to like maybe why it's necessary to have someone just showing you a bit of the way, or giving you like that really gentle,
Yeah.
push forward. Saying
Yeah.
you actually so able to do that. And
Yeah.
everything activates at the time is necessary.
It's true. I mean, if you look at the old, like, I mean, I'm talking about the Indian Vedic scriptures and stuff, right? Sometimes, I mean, initially when I used to read it, I used to feel like, oh, that's a bit harsh. But then once I started doing all of this work, I was like, that makes so much sense, because in the scriptures it says that children at the, I think until the age of like 7 or 8, they would stay with the parents, and then after that they would be sent to school, and that is usually like away from home, and then you're staying with your guru or your teacher, and then you stay with your teacher for a period of time until you learn everything, and then once you're of age to be married, that's when you come back home. So you have a teacher, you have someone who you're living with, who's teaching you all of these things, your whatever, your scriptures, your prayers, etc., all of those things, your education, whatever is needed, is with this one person who's guiding you. And then, I mean, now when I see it back, it's like it just makes so much sense. So it would be such a wonderful place, like, you know, even in this day and age, if we could have someone teaching human design in schools, or someone teaching the essence of energy in school. You know, I mean, with my children, like my daughter, a manifester, and my son being a generator, when she was in kindergarten, I think KG2, she came back home, and then every day she would come back home, and then she would be in the toilet for like an hour. She would just sit there. And once I just went up to her and I was like, what are you doing? Why are you taking so long? Are you okay? What's going on? And this is kindergarten, yeah. And she tells me, she's like, Mama, there's so many people in the school. I really just need some alone time. I was just blown, and I was like, okay. I was like, okay, baby, you can come out and get your alone time. You don't have to be in the toilet to get your alone time. But obviously, there's people in the house as well. So that was just alone space. And then obviously, once I discovered human design, I'm like, oh, as a manifester,
Manifestor,
you
my
really
God.
need to clear your energy, right? Every single day, you must clear your energy. So she was just intuitively doing it. So as children, we all know all of these things. We intuit, like, when a baby is born in a water birth, the baby knows what it has to do. But the knowledge comes in, and then we have to learn this is how you're supposed to behave, or this is your name, this is your religion and your culture. And that just creates so much separation in the world. And where has it gotten us? But again, to see, it's like all of the stress and the tension and everything in the world is just a reflection of all of the the stress and anger and hate that we carry inside of us. So you're right, like if every person in every house could start it, and then it kind of becomes the ripple effect or the butterfly effect, and we can just feed into the world. I guess the energy of the world could change, but it has to. And I think that's happening more so, don't you think? I
Yes.
feel like alternate medicine is slowly becoming mainstream more and more, and I love it so much when I hear those cases. Even like insurance companies, for example, accepting alternate therapies as part of insurance claims, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, I feel sometimes I personally wish it would happen faster, but
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
happening definitely. So,
yeah,
um, and I can see like the world that is teaching human design and meditation and energy work in school. How
yeah.
beautiful would that be if
That would
children
be,
need to not decondition
yeah,
as adults
yeah,
from the stuff that I've been programmed with unconsciously. It's no judgment around it, but
exactly.
if like that's how I try to raise my kid is like to condition him as less as
Yeah,
I just can. Of course,
yeah,
like things happen,
for sure. That's his
I'm
journey.
definitely not perfect, but I'm trying to not condition him. And I think that the less we do condition them to be a certain way in the and let that like initial knowledge, like you said, your daughter knew what to do. And you
Yeah,
found out like, okay, that's the manifesto cycle. She needs a
yeah,
rest period. Oh, amazing. She
yeah.
already knows.
She already
They
knew.
are already know. So we have already known, but then kind of like don't be so loud. So I don't know, introverts or whatever.
Yeah,
We try to be someone else, but it's like deconditioning if it's happening more and more. And I think that's what we're in right now. We come back to our true selves more and more. And this might take some time to like ripple out collectively, but it started rolling and it's such an interesting period to
yeah,
observe and be part of
yeah,
by
100%.
whatever we can do ourselves to like ripple that out
Yeah,
and kind of be a bit more of an inspiration to others to
yeah.
try certain things that they feel drawn to and see if that fits for them.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's so I've started writing my book, and that's the premise of the book, that there's nothing wrong with you. You're not broken in a way. It's just about you discovering who you are, and it's a remembrance. It's coming back to who you knew you were, but you just kind of forgot. And that's okay, because that was part of the journey. That was the veil, the Maya, whatever you call it. It just had to be there because you chose to learn those lessons. So sometimes it comes easier, sometimes it takes a bit longer, but at the end, it always comes at the right time, and that's okay. But I guess a little bit of curiosity and a little less being the victim, and just asking questions like, okay, what is this trying to tell me, can change so much. And I think that's one of my biggest message to all of my clients is like, instead of ask questions, be in question mode, but don't ask questions like, why is my life so pathetic, why am I such a loser, why, just ask the right kind of questions like, okay, what is this teaching me, what is this helping me, what is this trying to tell me,
Yeah,
what's the benefit that I can't see yet. And so ask those kind of questions. So be in question mode, ask the right questions, and then see how it shifts. It's just changing your perspective, that's it.
yeah, yeah. And it is quite simple. We sometimes need a bit guidance to
Yeah,
like
exactly.
start and initiate this process. But then again, we're so capable of doing it. And it can be so fun. So I love the curiosity that you picked on, like this childish curiosity, even just, oh, okay, what's behind that door, you know? Not expecting it to be like really bad,
Yeah.
just like, what is it? And that's, I think, what we can learn from the children is this like, they never doubt if they're gonna learn how to walk. They just fall and then get up again. And then they do it again and do it again and do it again. And if we would just keep a bit of that in adulthood, things will be so much easier. So I think to leave listeners with the empowerment, what you said, and this like asking the right kind of questions, the ones that make you feel more expanded instead of more like contracted, and then to like really follow the guidance that comes from within is just a beautiful way to get to know yourself and to also like change not only yourself, but to just like put it very dramatically to change the world because you're rippling it out.
Literally. Yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that.
I thank you so much. This
Thank
was
you.
lovely. Oh, it was so much fun for me. I thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank
I
you
had
so much for having
had
me. It
the
didn't feel like
best
an
time.
hour at all.
No, it didn't feel like it.
And I'm sure we could go on for another two.
Yes, I would love to talk about your chakra work as well. So maybe we hop on for another episode soon to like
Sure.
and the feng shui we haven't even touched on it, so
We
there's
haven't. Yeah.
definitely much more to explore. But I'll leave the listeners with that for today because I feel it's like it's again the integration part of like really, sitting with what comes up when you hear
Hmm.
things like this and then seeing like where does it fit in my own life, and it needs to be like bite-sized, I
Hmm.
feel, so that we can kind of, make sense of it.
Yeah, I've started doing that even more so with even reading a book. Sometimes I just read a chapter or half a chapter, and then I just have to stop and I was like, huh, what is that teaching me? But that pause, that integration is so important, which I'm realizing the value of so much now. Because again, it's like the more you read, the more you take in. When is the time to? It's almost like when you're in a work scenario, corporates, right? You have meetings back to back, but now when do I have the time to sit and work on what was discussed in the meeting? So it's the same thing. So I've learned all of this stuff. Now I need to stop and now process it and integrate it and think it. What do I think of it? And how does this feel in my body? And those are important questions.
Yeah, agreed, agreed.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
And
you,
wish
Anna. This
you
was
a
fun.
wonderful day, wonderful week,
And
and
you?
we will speak very soon, I'm sure.
Sure.
Thank you, my
All
dear.
right.